Welcome to Startups Uncensored number 39 with Get Satisfaction CEO Wendy Lea and DocStock CEO Jason Nazar.
So let's just do a quick poll of the audience so you get a sense of who all's here this evening. How many of you right now are in the process of or plan in the next couple months to be starting and running your own company? All right. So got about a core half the audience. How many of you right now are looking to raise money for your company?
Good luck.
Right.
No.
How many of you already know about Get Satisfaction?
Yeah.
Woo!
Oh, nice.
How many of you are customers of Get Satisfaction?
There you go.
All right, we got a lot of people we can sell in the room tonight. This is a good deal.
Oh, that's
This is
awesome.
a good deal.
I have a quota tonight.
So that tells you a little bit about the audience. Why don't we start off just with a little bit about you, and we'll get into the company, but your background and how you got to what you've been doing today, and let's start even just where you grew up and how you got into business.
All righty. I am from Mississippi. Anyone know where that is? It's a state way over there. Born and raised in Mississippi.
What part?
Oxford, Mississippi. Went to Ole Miss. Yeah, that's an interesting part. That's south of Memphis. Most people know where Memphis is. They don't know where Oxford is. I am a girl with deep Southern roots. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I wanted to be my dad. I loved my mom and still do, but my dad was my hero. And so what that looked like as a little girl is that he worked for a pharmaceutical company called McKesson and Robbins, if you remember, now called McKesson HBO. But I wanted to always, I didn't play with dolls and stuff like that. And even though, that really made my mother sad, I wanted to keep everybody organized, right? And so I was a machine like that from a little girl. Like when my dad would come home on Friday nights, I would say, all your papers are organized on the desk. I would say to my mom.
So you were a kiss ass.
Yeah. And I would say, what are we having for dinner? Because he's tired. He needs food. It was weird. But anyway, that's me. And I'm still that way to this day.
And then, so where'd you go to undergrad at?
I went to Ole Miss. That was the only place. My grandfather was athletic director at Ole Miss for 40 years. So I am from that part of the world.
Did you play any sports growing up?
I did not. Not a sports girl. I'm a business girl. Right. But I understand sport. I understand Archie Manning kind of sport, his kids kind of sport. So that's my era.
And then what did you do right after undergrad?
My first job out of school, I got married very early, and so I had to go to work because he was in medical school. So I told a little fib to get a job as a secretary in a law office. I said I could type, and I really couldn't very well. Really, that's the truth. And then after I was there 6 months, I said, I think
Well, what'd you do when you showed up day one and you couldn't type?
No, but I just organized things, and I kind of did a lot of hand waving. And then I said, but I can do good interviews. And he was a criminal attorney. I said, let me go to the prisons, and I'll talk to your peeps, like the people you're representing. And he goes, what? And I said, yeah, I want to do that. Of course, that didn't work out, and I got fired.
What'd you get fired
it was
for?
okay. I was sad that I got fired.
It doesn't seem like the dream job as a 21-year-old girl from Mississippi going to prison all day long.
No,
I can't imagine your dad
I like the psychology of that, right? But no, then I went and worked for General Foods, and so it goes. I've had some big corporate jobs, and then I left corporate life pretty early. When did you know you were really good at business? When did it click for you? When I was organizing those expense reports for my dad. No.
Yeah.
No, I knew because I'm a workflow person. Like I think of everything through a value chain. There's the product, there's understanding the market, there's the product, there's the marketing of it, there's the selling of it, there's the operations. I don't know, I just kind of got that early. And I think working for General Foods I was young, and I think I made, $600 a month or something. And I had a big territory. I drove around in a Pinto station wagon. It was awesome. Stayed in a little motel.
Pinto made a station wagon?
Oh, yeah, and I had my samples in the back. But the point was that when I would go into a big grocery store, and my job was to get as many facings of my product as possible. That was my job, right? But I didn't know that the head office had a skewed diagram around all that. I think, I'll do whatever I want. I'll move the Kellogg's guys over. I'll get more facings for me. And then the manager came up and said, you know, that has to be approved. I never did know very well, right? No wasn't something I understood very well. So I just kind of got it. You know, I had my product programs, I had my merchandising, I had my sales, I just always got it. Love business. To me, I'm very curious. And that really plays well for what I do at Get Satisfaction, because we get to understand all the businesses that use us, right? And I love that.
And so what was your transition from corporate world to being an entrepreneur?
So this is an interesting one, because I don't think I was made to suck up. You said I was good at that. I'm really not. I have charm, because I'm from the South, so people always say, you're charming. And I don't know what that really means. But I think it's good, mostly. But the point is, I don't enjoy, when I see something that's not right, I just call it out. And I don't get in trouble for calling it out as much because I'm from the South, and so people put up with it more, right?
I thought you were going to say because you're a girl.
Well, I was going to say that. But
I thought you were going to say that. Because I get in a lot of trouble for it,
no,
right?
of course you do, because you do, you should. But girls don't get as, but so I can just kind of tell people when they're like stupid and they don't get as mad at me as they would at you. It's just, it's an advantage. Let's use every advantage we have. But I really knew with this big company that I worked with that I could not deal with a lack of capacity up here. You know, all the showing, and I couldn't deal with it. So I got in trouble because I called an executive out. Not good. I was very young. And I probably
What did you call them out for? What did you say?
Because he was not exactly telling the truth.
Okay.
So, and I knew he wasn't, and he had a big room full of people like this, and he was all blustering. The press was there. I'm like, I wasn't whistleblowing. I didn't even know what that was, but now I do. But I was like, you know, I don't think that's exactly right. That's not how we talked about it before we came in here. And all of a sudden the story's changed. How could that be? He goes, well, I'm the executive poobah general manager of everything. I'm like, you know, where I come from, didn't tell the truth. That's not good. And when he looked at me, I thought, I'm not going to keep this job very long. I'm in trouble. And I needed the work. So I thought, I got to go find something else to do. And that's when I got into really entrepreneurship, honestly, because I went to work for a bootstrapped guy, brilliant guy, ended up being a mentor. And to be honest with you, that was 1984, and I'm doing kind of the same work, and it's 2014. So that's 30 years. So that moved, I think that was a seminal event, noticing that this very important executive, this poobah of a lot of stuff, wasn't right on with his integrity. I'm thinking, I can't be part of that. And I just changed the game for myself, and I've continued to tumble and work in this entrepreneurial life ever since then, and have kind of not looked back, honestly. And I've worked on many sides of the street, right? I've been a bootstrapped entrepreneur. I worked for a bootstrap guy. I was a bootstrap person. Now I'm a venture-backed person. I was an angel investor. I was acquired. So there's kind of like many faces of Eve, all caught up in that. That's an amazing experience.
And so let's talk about the bootstrapping experience. I think that's what a lot of folks are going through here today.
Bootstrappers, okay, got it.
So you spent.
It's really awesome. Don't let them talk you out of it.
You spent 10 years building up your last company and didn't take any investment.
Not one penny.
What did that company do? What did that company do to start off with, and then just talk about that experience?
Yeah. So this is really an important story for whether you're in the services business, or it doesn't even matter. So you can have customers help you grow your business. I think that's what it's all about. That's what I've been told, and I believe that. So in this case, we were in the business of helping large enterprise customers, high-tech companies, big blue chips, be more effective in their relationships with customers. That's kind of the net out. And we wrote products and services to do that.
You did training videos and training processes.
Absolutely. It was sales effectiveness training, full stop.
And let's just start with then, because you and I talked about it's public, how much the company sold for, it's out there.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right. So you never raised a dime for the company, because I think this is really important. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I've got to raise a lot of money for a company to sell it for a lot. How much did you guys sell your company for?
We sold it for $300 million, a complete stock deal, no cash, public company stock. It was a $50 million company. We had no outside capital.
Meaning you were doing $50 million in sales.
That's right, $50 million sales. And this is not like recurring subscription sales. This is like one project at a time, right? So to big companies. We had 250 employees, a lot of 1099s, meaning contractors. Very, very strict, consistent intellectual property around what we did. So it wasn't like, project, let's do one for you, let's do one for you. Like, we never did that. We decided who we were, what we were going to do, who we were going to do it for. We stayed within those rails. And, we never thought about an exit. I didn't even know what that word meant until I started working for these venture capitalists. I didn't know what an exit, that sounded dirty to me. I mean, all I knew is one thing. I wanted our customers to be absolutely in love with what we did. And that was all I thought about.
What was the trajectory of that business? So year, 1, 2, and 3, what was the scale of the revenue there?
It was interesting. It was, getting to $1 million in that business is not hard. Getting to 5, you kind of have to kick it in. And then it goes 5, 10, 50.
And then boom.
Yeah, because we did some acquisitions at the end. We got a little cool and kind of felt like we had some mojo, and we did a little roll-up, a minor roll-up, which is not hard in that industry because everyone can put a shingle out. It's not, and people get tired fast because it's a very, it can be a very people-intensive business. We didn't make it that way. Others do because they make it themselves, and I'm like teaching you to do all this crap. We never did that. We're like, okay, here's our methodology. We have others do it. So it's very, very interesting.
So, but talk about the learning curve early on, because what I'm interested in is, you're a first-time entrepreneur. You're starting running this business as a woman. Where there's probably less women founders at the time than there are even today, and today there's, it's still disproportionate. What were the key lessons that you learned those first couple formative years of starting and running that business?
So a couple. First of all, it is about declaring where you want to be and who you want to be first. It's easy, I think, it was easy for me to get lost in the weeds of 1 or 2 customers. HP was a customer, Oracle was a customer. They were very complex customers. And so it was my partner, who was also my husband, by the way, that was much better at declaring the big thing than I was. I mean, I wanted those relationships to be strong. And so I think, to me, just getting behind that and knowing that's what we were doing.
Having a vision for...
Absolutely. The vision is, now I've become a little unconsciously competent about stuff like that, because you do when you, over time. That was so important. And I remember being in office and him saying, well, we're going to be the leaders in this space. I looked at him like, really? He goes, yeah, we can do that. I said, but it's only like 4 of us. How can we do that? He goes, we can. We will do it. I'm like, okay, got it. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is keeping your quality high, which means saying no to things that don't fit into that. The say no stuff is a big deal.
And how do you balance saying no early on where you need every dollar?
Well,
right, it's easy to say it when you actually don't need the money.
I know, hindsight always sounds good. At the time, when you vision against a segment that you're serving against a pure capability, the more defined that is, I think the better off you are. Honestly, because that helps you say no. Those are your guardrails. So now, mistakes I've made is I go wider because I see a bigger picture, and that's hard. So in that way, we had limited resources. We had to go fast. We had to feed people, right? Mm-hmm. So your constraints become kind of the beauty of it all, I think. See, the thing with venture-backed businesses is you're not constrained enough. It's weird.
Actually, my venture capitalist put me in a straitjacket for the first month. So in our case,
well,
but that was more part of my particular training process.
I see.
I hear not everyone has to go through that.
Yeah. But I would say when you're bootstrapped, your constraints are more explicit. That's all. And so therefore, you have to hit your milestones. Otherwise, you don't eat or pay your employees.
What's it like working with a spouse? That seems, I've heard, in some cases, like, for example, we had the co-founders of Eventbrite, and they're
Kevin
great.
And Julie,
Kevin and Julie
awesome.
are amazing. But what was that experience like, and is there a trick to not wanting to kill each other?
Does anyone else work with their spouse? Yeah. It was the best time of my life. I've had a great life and a long life and a big life. It was the best time of my life. So I don't know if I got lucky or it just worked out. I mean, sadly, we're not together anymore. But at the time, it just was fabulous because we were very different, but we believed in the same things relative to business.
What is there a secret? I mean, you spend so much time with this person, right? You don't get to, you never leave
here's
their
the
side.
thing, not really, because in the work we did, maybe that was the secret to it. In the work we did, we were out with our clients.
Got it.
So we would leave on Sunday nights, we would come back on Friday nights, and they were exhausted, and it was nice and cozy, right? And so as long as you had kind of the vision of where you were headed, you were doing your client work. So it wasn't like we went to the office together and had coffee and kind of you had your job. I mean, it wasn't like that. I mean, we were road warriors. I mean, I have now something like 7 million miles on American Airlines. I mean, so everybody was like concerned about me getting here today.
Which we'll be raffling off this evening.
Yeah, it was like an
Lucky
hour's
you for
trip.
coming.
This is not hard. Like I always travel a lot. So it was a good thing, not a bad thing. I mean, not for everyone, but for me, it was fabulous.
How did for a company that you didn't necessarily intend to sell, how did the whole process come together where somebody?
Good question.
How'd that?
So first of all, to be specific, my husband and I, so we were part of a growth path where we were acquired into this. We were like a $12 million company, and we got acquired into a $25 million, and the mashup. So that's how it worked. I remember the day that I said to my partner husband, it's time for us to roll up or be rolled up. Because you will know when you can't scale. You'll feel it, that tension, right? That not just the stress, but the tension of the value chain kind of like crumbling a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so I said to him, and of course his ego mine's big and his was bigger, and he's a Brit, so that was another thing, because they're always the smartest people in the room. But I mean, I said to him, it's time. All those people that have been trying to acquire us, we need to kind of come together. And we just knew. So that was an important milestone.
But
right?
you started the roll-up process, right?
Yeah. And because I knew it was important, right? Because you don't always have to do it the hard way. This is a Silicon Valley thing. You cannot always do things feature by feature, product by product. I think that's silliness. When you see your market, this is the part of business I love, when you see a market you're serving kind of start shifting a lot for whatever reason, you need to step back and look at that and see how you become part of the shift, drive the shift, or you're otherwise just going to be thrown out. It happens, even if you're cool and have a great product. And so I had that instinct. I didn't have all I needed to make it happen, but I had that instinct, and then we made it happen together.
So you sell the company,
Yep.
You start doing a little bit of angel investing, you're hanging
that was
out,
fun.
You're getting a little bored, you were telling me.
I was in Boulder. Yeah, I'd gone through this ugly divorce, which happens. But I loved this. Then I started learning about venture stuff. Now, here's the truth. I remember sitting in the office of Brad Feld, if anyone knows the Foundry Group, sitting in his office. This is how naive I was. And I was already 50 then. So this is 10 years ago, so you can add, and that tells you my age. But when I sat there with him, I said, now, Brad, tell me what you do.
Are you expecting me to tell you what
and
he
he
said?
was like, what do you mean, what do I do? I said, well, what does that really mean? Because I was bootstrapped. How would I know what a VC did? I mean, I sold to HP and IBM and Cisco. I mean, I don't know what they do. And he explained it to me. I said, that sounds risky. He goes, yeah. So he took me under his wing and taught me so much. Stuff I had no idea about.
What were the big things? What was
The big
part of
things
the
is
learning curve?
like just developing a product, a software product, right? Not really knowing exactly what it would do or knowing exactly who it would serve. That was amazing to me. And I would look at the financials of it. This is, because I'm bootstrapped, right? I'm like, they lose that much money every month? I would say, that doesn't look good to me. He goes, it's okay. I'm like, now I understand that, right? If you saw my financials, I completely get that, right? Burn, yes, I understand. But he explained that, and so I loved the product development part. I loved the thinking about, the messaging around the product. I loved everything about it, but there was some hard stuff there too, right? This is not for the faint of heart. And these founders, they would think the world is going to be their oyster and they're going to make $1 billion and they're going to be the next whomever. And I'm like, really, this seems like a feature to me. I got in trouble a lot for saying that. That seems like a feature. That doesn't seem like a company. And they're like, it is. It's going to be the biggest thing. I said, okay, whatever. So I learned a lot. I made some angel investments, lost a lot of money. I put a little amount of money aside, invested all of it, lost most of it.
What are some of your more notable angel investments?
Ustream is a great one. So Ustream was a good angel investment.
You said you're in Uber?
I'm in Uber.
What else?
But through a fund, right?
Okay.
Not a direct investment. Those two are my best ones, Ustream and Uber. The others, kind of not so much, except for Get Satisfaction. Yay. Yeah. So angel investing is tricky. I mean, we don't have to talk about the dynamics. I'm sure you have other sessions on that. I would do small bites. I would never lead. I would always come behind someone like Brad or David or others that had really knew how to do the proper due diligence.
But you must get just approached by a lot of people as an investor all the time.
Tons. And now, I might go back to doing that one day, but I'll be smarter now that I've been one of those.
Here's some, before we'll get to satisfaction in a moment. Mark Andreessen had this really amazing post he wrote about 3 years ago talking about the benefits as a young 20-year-old that you have of being an entrepreneur, and then he compared that to what you have later on, right? The energy level, the stamina, the fact that the opportunity cost is so small, you can take so many risks and lose so many times. What do you think are the big benefits of starting a company really early on, and what are the things that you've learned and that you have now that are just, when you look at a 22-year-old entrepreneur that's raised $20 million, what's the first thing that goes to your mind?
Oh my goodness. I think about living up to the valuation, but that's being polypragmatic, right? I mean, look, I think if you have the right capacity and dream and vision and someone will put money in it, go for it. I mean, I wouldn't optimize too much for the pragmatism. I think that's not good. I mean, I think you have to believe in what you're doing and not let the demons of the dark shadow of what coulda, woulda, shoulda happened, go for it. I think it's the longer you stay in it, like I have, the more pragmatic you get. And I don't know that that's always great, right? I mean, I don't. I sometimes wish, I think I know too much now. Sometimes I wish I could just be more in a beginner's mind, right? And just don't worry about that. Just kind of go for it and not worry about making sure your investors get their money and make sure every employee is happy and make sure every customer, just okay, it's never going to be perfect. Let it go. Just think big. So I like that part. I do, though, think that in business there is a system and that needs to be understood. Right?
What does that mean? There needs to be
a system? Well, there's a system. I mean, the system, and it can be swirly and agile. It doesn't have to be old and waterfall, but there's a system. Their requirements and their products, and then their ways to put them forward, and then their customers. I mean, there's a system. That's not changing, right? Now, how we deliver that might change. How we message it, how many videos we do might change, but there's a system, and I like that. I think that gives us comfort that there's a system, just like you have to sleep, you have to eat, right? I think, you should take a bath pretty regularly. I mean, there's Maslow's hierarchy of living, and I think there's the same thing in business. But then if you get that system down, here's what I would say.
That's an interesting concept. So what would, if you take that analogy, what's the Maslow hierarchy of needs for business? How would you describe that?
Well, first of all, understand the market and the customers in the market. Now, here's the thing. I don't really like to talk about market as a big thing. I think that's goofy. I think that's what analysts do. When you're building something, I think you need to think generally of a market, and then you need to just define very specifically the customer you think you want to serve. Now, you may not always serve that customer, but the deeper you get into that, I think the better you are. Now, remember, I've been in company-customer relationships for a long time, so this is something that's very embedded in me. And so I like really understanding that archetype, right? That persona, that person. I think that's really important. That's basic. You're going to have to do that. Period. Then you're going to have to think, okay, what's the MVP, being techie and cool now, for that particular customer? You don't have to build everything. In fact, don't overbuild it. So you have to think of that. That's your product, your basic product. Then you need to think of your basic messaging because you have to communicate it. Now, how you communicate is another thing. Through videos or however, through the website or through telephone, it doesn't matter to me, but you need to get those, that's basic. That's hygiene. And then you've got to figure out how it's going to be sold. That doesn't have to be a person. It could be on the site. It could be a distributor, but that's a channel of selling. And then you're going to have to service them. To me, this is the hygiene of business, like the Maslow's hierarchy of a person. Okay. Now, I know we get creative with it, but I think if an entrepreneur of any type, venture-backed or bootstrap, can get the hygiene down, then you can be much better with all the pieces in between. And that's what I love. The curiosity are the pieces in between. But don't try to change the basic hygiene of it. It just exists. Don't you think? Do you agree?
I'm not disagreeing with you. Let's just get that straight.
I'm not selling you either.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you say. At least not in front of all these nice people. No, I'll disagree with you, but not on that point. That's a very, okay. I love it. I'm going to steal it. Talk about Get Satisfaction. For those folks that don't know what the product is, just give them a brief overview. And probably for the people that don't think they know what it is, they've interacted with it and seen it dozens of times.
So we're in the business of helping customers connect with products, services, and brands that they have passionate about, right? And we do that through an application called a community application. And that application is open, which means all the conversations between us around a product and service are being indexed. And through that, content is being served up to consumers so they can get their questions answered, their problems solved, their ideas exchanged, and SEO comes back to the owner of the business. It's a beautiful product. Here's what.
And people may have most notably seen it because of the little sidebar,
widget,
right?
It says feedback, right?
Right. So if you've ever been on a website and you see on the right-hand side of that website, there's that vertical bar that says feedback. You click it, it pulls it up. That's what activates Get Satisfaction.
Right. And at the highest level, though, it's all about relationships between companies and their customers.
And so let's start with the beginning. So you didn't found the company, right?
I did
Two
not.
folks started the company.
Three founders.
Three founders.
Amy and Thor Mueller and Lane Becker. I was coming back from
Bay
Boulder.
Area.
Bay Area.
Technologists.
They are brilliant designers and thought leaders, prolific. And they had launched the site in late '07, raised some early seed money, which you do, had a big kickoff party like you do, launched it, yay, and just had tons of traction, the big T word. That was awesome. And then there was '08, which was a kind of funky year, if those of you remember that. And that wasn't an easy year for them. And even though they had a lot of traction, that traction wasn't turning into money. And but that's kind of the other side of it. The fact is, when I met those guys, I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to operate something. I wanted to be close to CRM. I've been in CRM now for 30 years, long time. I wanted it to be in CRM, customer relationship management, but something involved with the social web. These guys, I fell in love immediately. I asked no questions. I said, where do I sign? Money in, time in. I couldn't wait. And I've been there 4 years, 3 months. And every day is fun and hard and exciting, and it's a big deal.
So from going from starting your own company and being the founder and running that business for 10 years to then heading up a company that other people started, what's that experience like?
Well, you learn that control is an illusion, right?
Can you expand on that?
Well, I mean, you think we're all control freaks at some level. And even though, I have this Southern accent and this, female self, I like to get shit done. And when I want you to do something, I kind of want you to do it, right? Like hurry.
I'm getting a little nervous right now, honestly. I'm not going to lie. My heart's just started being a little bit faster. I felt like, what did not I do that's going to get you upset at me?
I don't know. I had such a sense of urgency in the beginning because I was so excited, because to me it looked like the real CRM, not the old CRM that I was born with and raised with. So I was like, come on, let's go. And they're the founders. And so they had a certain very interesting and creative way of operating, and I had to learn a lot about that. And it was really both interesting and challenging because I'm a workaholic and I just have to accept that. So we all have our addictions and demons, and that's one of mine, right? And I was like, well, you're not here yet. I mean, I was there like at 8, like a little kid. I'm in the office with my lunchbox, right? Like, okay, we're here. Where's everybody? Well, it's San Francisco. Like, we'll get there. But it's not like they weren't working.
And when did folks show up?
Kind of whenever,
Yeah.
right? But it's not like they weren't working. But I'm like, come to the office. I'm like, they're working with their laptops at home. And like, I remember this is priceless. We were in South Park, great space. It was all cool and hip, like your office, with the rafters. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love this. Everyone was around one big table, and I just loved it. I would take the train up from Menlo Park, and I would walk in. I would just feel like a kid in school every day. And there was no phone there. And I went, how could we be in the business of customer engagement and there be no phones? This is how old I am. And they were like, what's wrong with that? We're talking to people online. I said, no, I want to hear their voices. And, Wendy, we're online. This is how we do it. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's a community. I get that. But what if they call and they want to talk to us? And they said, well, we have our cell phones. I said, but there's not a number on the site. We don't want to put the number on the site. Really? It was just, the whole thing just freaked me right out. I was so freaked out, the whole thing. But I learned so much. But the point is, when you are a hired CEO, and you walk into a situation, and there's so much I don't know. I know nothing about the social web. Facebook has 150 million users, that's it. Twitter won't even stay up. It's like flopping around, right? It was a very interesting time, and I'm like a kid in a candy store organizationally, everyone around a big table, and then with their headphones on, not talking to each other. I'm like, what is that? Talk to me. They're like, go away. I'm like, I want to have a meeting. Can we have a meeting? And they're like, we're doing our emails. It was so hard. I kind of wanted like a den mother, right? And so I learned a lot. They helped me a lot. But they're entrepreneurs and they're brilliant guys. They wrote a New York Times bestseller, and they taught me a lot.
What was the book again?
Get Lucky. You think they did?
They got very lucky with you. But they didn't stay that long, right? So you
No,
joined
they didn't. One left kind of early because we were raising money. That was hard. And then
you were raising in 08.
Yeah.
And
Well, actually, 09.
Okay.
Not
So
08.
originally they had raised $3 million.
Yeah,
The $3
give or
million
take.
was gone.
Yeah.
How many employees did they have at the time?
9.
9.
Three
and
founders.
how many? And so there's no
No
revenue coming in.
customers, no
No
business.
customers. How many folks were using Get Satisfaction?
Oh, thousands.
And was there still the growth rate going up?
Yeah. That
Okay.
was a beautiful thing. So both consumer growth and business growth,
And
because
so
you could use it free.
Who'd you raise that next round from?
First from Azure Capital. Azure Capital, they were the first investors in VMware. And so they put the first institutional money in the deal.
And so talk about that process, because you're in a company that's still not making any revenue. It's 09. It's still kind of a tough time. What was the process like of having to convince somebody that you and your team were going to be able to turn this into a big, viable business?
Well, I am the CEO, and I have our founders with me, and I still couldn't tell the story like they could. So it was very intimidating. Because
even after a year?
It was interesting because I knew the vision and the business model. I had the numbers, but they knew the intricacies of how it worked, and they were just more compelling because they're young and entrepreneurial, and everyone knows them. They're like social media guys. I was very intimidated. I must say that, and I had to get over that.
Really, after all your
Honestly,
life and business experience?
I'm just saying.
But why?
I had never dealt with VCs. Come on.
Having to ask somebody for their money.
Other people's money, I had a demon around that. I had a little dark shadow around other people's money.
Can you talk about that? What does that really mean?
Well, that means I didn't want to disappoint them.
Even after everything you'd experienced in business,
it's
and all the
weird. I
success
know
you
it
had.
sounds weird. I promise you that. In fact, just saying, the first term sheet I got didn't work out very well. There were decisions made after it was presented to me that were not favorable. And that almost killed me. And I mean, really, the disappointment was beyond description. And I got through it. Notice I'm still there and raising money and having a blast. But that was a really awful, difficult time because I didn't want to disappoint the founders. I didn't want to disappoint our customers. I didn't want to disappoint the VCs. But here's an interesting thing. I remember the morning I got the notice that this term sheet wasn't going to make.
I'm going to jump in for a second.
Go.
Is that a gender thing at all? I feel no, but really, like I feel like a lot of guys, like maybe just their ego is so big, like they don't optimize for not disappointing people. I feel that, right? I feel all the time,
Maybe
like
is.
folks gave us money and there's this real sense of responsibility to give it back. But I hear that a lot from women
Right,
founders,
maybe so.
executives, where it's like there's a sense of.
I was born with one of those I'm overly obligated and responsible gene. Maybe it's because I'm the oldest, I don't know. But it really freaked me out. Now, again, you wear it better over time. But the first time when we heard that maybe that wasn't going to make, our seed investors met me, and they were really disappointed. Not in me, just in the situation. They said, "Are you going to stay?" I said, "Well, of course. What do you mean, am I going to stay?"
It's a funny thing. You feel like you let them down, but they feel like, they want to keep you.
I mean, it was weird. I'm like, you're asking me if I'm going to stay because someone changed their mind? Of course I'm staying. I mean, I'm completely in love with this, smitten. And that was a turning point. Now, after that, every minute gets easier. Once you get to the bottom, everything gets easier, right?
How do you know when you get to the bottom? Because I feel like
when you have no money and can't make payroll.
There you go. And
That's a pretty clear bottom where I come from.
Is that where you were? I mean, was it
close?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they'd raised some money right before we got into it. But yeah, come on. I mean, this is, again, let's just talk about the hygiene of business. You don't have money to pay people, it's hard, right? You can't keep the site up. But we got through that, and then everything gets better, and then you go through other stages, right? But I mean, now it's just completely different, right? We've got thousands of customers, very large ones, very small ones, they all pay.
And so talk about how you transition the business into a paid service and what that looks like.
Well, you have to go back to the hygiene of business. Building stuff is good. Telling people you have it is smart. But then you have to package and price it in a way that folks can consume it and get value from it.
And what are people paying for today, the advanced features?
Yeah, you could all the way up to $3,000 a month. From a couple of $100s a month to, in fact, $300 a month, all the way up to $3,000 a month.
And what's the difference of what you get? Is it $3,000 versus $300?
Service, integration points, and some features too.
And does it make a difference based upon usage volume, the number of people that are using it?
There is an aspect of that as well in terms of activity in the community. But that's an ongoing challenge. So those of you that offer, I'm a multi-tenant SaaS provider, B2B, right? I mean, that's a piece of work. You got to have lots of smarts and lots of iteration around that. You don't just like pick a price point because 37 Signals does it and stick with it. As you know, you've got to constantly change that.
But what's it like? So you're in the Bay Area. You're with a company that tech founders. First 2 years of the company.
High profile.
High profile, very high profile. What was the transition like from taking it from a pure technology product company into an actual sales organization where people need to pick up a phone and get somebody to pay for something?
Yeah, it really, once we got over that hump, it wasn't as hard as it sounds because I represent that. I absolutely love customers and I can't wait to talk to them when they're happy, when they're mad, when they're new, when they're old, I don't care. I just love that because that's where I learn, right? And I think having a CEO like myself that modeled that helped others. But it took a while.
And how do you prevent not having these different camps? I mean, even in our case, right? We're just starting to do kind of sales, and now there's these different parts of the organization. It wasn't like it was 5 years ago where it was 5, 10, 15 of us, and we just all interacted all day long. How do you prevent there being from the engineering camp and the product camp and then the sales team?
Well, there's no like little formula for that, I don't think. But I think you're optimizing for your overall mission. Our mission is to help customers interact with products, services, and brands that they have passion about. Well, if you're going to create that, you're going to have to talk to companies about that opportunity. So I don't know. I'm not saying that silos don't exist, but provide a community service, and we are a community. So inside our company, we call it the Satisfactory. So there's not tons of
That's
people.
cool.
There are 50 people, and we have 3 offices, and we do our best. We're not great at it. We're not perfect every time, but we work on it to have a community there too, which means there's an interrelationship between all the different functional areas. This is the way work happens. It goes back to the hygiene of business. So we don't have that, okay, where you're the product guy and you're the service person. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have those teams, but at the end of the day, we're all about one thing, and that's customers, right? And we're about the customers. And because Lane and Thorpe, this is a brilliant thing, and I would recommend this to everybody. One of the things they did that so completely captured my heart is
These are the co-founders.
Co-founders. They had a document that expressed the philosophy of the business that they put forward to their customers. It's called a Company Customer Pact, P-A-C-T. It was brilliant. And I said, that's thoughtful. So it wasn't like, well, we're going to rule the world and be the biggest and the best and make a lot of money. They're just not those guys. I would have never joined that team, right? They really believed that consumers wanted to be able to influence each other and their brands, and they wanted to make sure the relationship was right, and they started that way. Now, the jumping off point is inside our company, we've tried to keep that up, right? And so I think the interrelationship between these teams is very important. We use our own product, not Yammer, right, to do that, right? And so that has been good for us. Now, we've had our ups and downs because the human condition is complex. And I do think that the human condition applied to work becomes even more so.
What's the specific? Give it a specific example.
Well,
of that.
because you have to, I mean, let's talk about that. You have certain aspirations and motivations as a human being. You know, those don't like get packed away when you come in to be the CEO. I mean, you bring those with you, and then you put on your suit and get all dolled up, and you become the operator. But that part of you comes forward, and sometimes it doesn't come forward cleanly, meaning in a way that's very understandable and consumable by people. In other words, you might act out. You probably don't, but you might. I do. I act out. I have meltdowns.
How do you act out? What do you do? What's your acting out?
Well, I just, I have a high tolerance for complexity, and I like a range of personality types, and then sometimes I'm just like have a meltdown. I'm like, what? That is the, when it comes to bugs in software especially, it'll just brew and brew and brew. I'm like, get the friggin' bugs fixed now. I want to know how many, where they are in Pivotal. I just have a little meltdown. And so I don't do that often, but when I raise my voice and do that, it's because I'm done, right? So sometimes my tolerance lasts too long. I should reduce my tolerance, in my view, and that would help, I think, keep the organization at a steadier state. So that is different. But let's just say the human condition is complex. We are people before we are employees. Always remember that. Cornerstone knows that. And so in this new world of work, the leadership required, individual leadership and group leadership, is very different. It's not about command and control. That shit's done. And so
What is it about?
It is about truly understanding the needs of an individual and making sure those needs can get connected up to the vision of the company and being very flexible about that.
And how do you do that?
Like when they come to work, how they come to work, what they want to be developed to do. People don't want to stay doing the same stuff all the time. I don't either. Do you? No one likes that. It's like, I'm done. I've been in that 2 years. I'm done. And if you can't provide a path to do something more interesting, I'm out of here. And in San Francisco, there's only 1,000 places they can go do. But that's hard, right? Because you can see them getting better and making big. Can't you just stick it out for another 6 months? No, I cannot. See ya. That's hard because you want that predictability. So I think today, if you're running a business, I'm just telling you, you have to really, I think, unpacking personal motivations is very, very critical. Don't just splash your own crap, your own business crap, onto the individual. Mm-hmm. I think they'll rebut that over time. They might be nice for a while, but then they crack.
So talk more about your management philosophy. How do you, well, let's talk about your day, and then we'll go into your management philosophy. How do you organize your day? Talk about a typical work day starting from when you get up to when it ends?
Okay, so I'm a 12, 15-hour girl. That's it. And it's because I don't have a lot of distraction, right? But even so, I have a dog, and that's about it. But when I get up, the first thing I do is check all my inbound Twitter stuff, because that's how I get smart, because I follow people that I want to learn from.
When do you start your day? What time?
About 5. And so I get up and kind of do my own personal meditation work, and then I start like figuring out what I need to know more about. I get my Twitter feed, I'll organize, not to send, not to publish, but to consume. So I'm a big consumer of data. So that gets me going for about an hour. Then I check my email. Then I walk my dog and I get to the office. And I start the day. And I'm very, no surprise, I'm very organized. So I have the day mapped out. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of free time. So I've got my standing meetings with my exec team. I like to spend about 20-25%.
And you told me you don't use an admin, so you're just organizing.
I have no admin.
I mean, even just in terms of managing all your
It's
appointments.
No, I don't have an. I have a personal assistant at home to keep up with food and stuff, but I don't have an admin at the office, no. Because I have to eat.
To make sure you're fed, right? Because right, if there wasn't this person in your life, you wouldn't be fed.
I have food and get my dry cleaning or whatever. Yeah, the house has to be straight. But no, I do my own work. I'm very self-sufficient. That's good and bad. Right, because
what's the bad part about
the bad part is that I look like a maniac, and also it's hard to keep up with me. So I kind of set a standard around that that's pretty hard, because I have a lot of expectation of myself. So I keep going in the day. I finish the day.
How much of your day do you spend in meetings, and what are the functional things you do other than managing and setting the vision? It sounds like you still do a lot of sales, right?
I was on a sales call this morning. Love that. About 25% of my time is with customers, existing or prospects or partnerships, which is a big thing for us. That is my most, I like reading and learning. I like being with customers, and then I make sure that I spend the right time with my exec staff. And then I like to spend a lot of time with the product people and not so much the engineers, because they're really, really busy. But we're building out a big product, a big future, so I have to stay with that, right? So I spend a lot of time that.
How would you describe your management philosophy?
Collaborative, open, transparent. Those aren't just jargon words. I have always trusted early. A lot of people don't. So you don't have to earn my trust. I provide that. If you violate it, that's not good, right? But so that's a different thing. I was taught. Some people are taught you have to earn your trust. Yeah. I think that's goofy.
What is violating the trust? Is that if just somebody doesn't meet your standards, or is that if they do something intentionally to harm? What violates the trust?
I mean, just it can even be the perception that you have.
Got it.
Right. I mean, that's about integrity and just being straightforward and doing what you say and saying what you do.
And are you still involved in the hiring for the team?
Guys, we're a startup still. I mean, we're 50 people, so we hire people, we fire people, we have people that leave to go do other things.
What questions do you ask in an interview? What are your go-to
Here's
questions?
my best question. I did a New York Times interview with the back office, that particular column. I loved doing that. It was so much fun. The best question I have taught myself to ask, and perhaps I heard someone ask this of me, but it was, a year from now, what will I know or observe about you that there's no way I could know that now? So take me in the future, something that would either excite me or disappoint me. In other words, something that there's no way I could know now, either because you don't want to tell me or I wouldn't want to hear.
What kind of answers do you typically get?
That I get anxious, my stress, like if I don't get this, I get stressed out. So I need, so then they come clean. The whole point is to get them to come clean, right? For something that they wouldn't naturally lean into.
I like that
question. It's a good question, I think, and I'm
gonna license it.
I would definitely, I won't charge you much.
I'm gonna take it.
What else?
All right, so that's the question. So you talked about your time. You saw how many folks here are in the process of starting a company. A lot of them here are bootstrapping. They've raised a little bit of money. Friends and family. They're trying to get that first angel round, maybe $500,000, $1 million. Where should they be spending their time? How much of their time should they just be doing the doing versus kind of stepping out? How would you recommend that they spend their day?
regardless of how they're funded.
Let's assume that they're trying to raise their first $1 million, and they've got $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 that they've to get them as far, because that's where a lot of folks at our
Look,
events.
any time you're spending with a prospect or a customer is a good time. So most of your time in those early stages should be
And what if
spent.
you build a consumer app where you're trying to get,
Well, then you're understanding them.
Yes.
Right, you're doing tests around that. I don't mean face-to-face like the old-fashioned way. I mean, you're researching them, you're sampling them, you're getting feedback from them, either a segment or the individuals. That is the most valuable time, because that is going to be the essence of the story that you're positioning to of any kind of an investor. And then you have to understand the overall market, and you have to understand the milestones and all that. But I find in taking pitches that to the degree that entrepreneur and founder can tell me about their customer and the value they're going to bring to them and why that value is important, I'm sold.
So
I mean, to me, that's the essence of it.
I'm really interested in this. When we were driving over, you talked about the fact, you said this phrase, you said, I don't pattern match with a lot of folks. And so just to kind of do it, you're not in your young 20s.
No.
You're not a male founder. You're
I'm not a programmer. I'm not a
you're
dev
not a developer.
person.
And you came up through sales, and you're from Mississippi, right? And so,
And I don't have my MBA.
well, to be fair, a lot of
Well,
folks.
but if you're in
Bay.
Silicon Valley, you're Stanford or whatever.
That's true. Yeah, you come from a certain kind of school. So, how did people at first respond to, and what's it been like, and what's it like for someone that kind of is so different than the check boxes of a typical Bay Area founder to be running a company up there?
It's fun. Until it's not. Until you want something that they won't give you, and they won't tell you that you don't pattern match well. I mean, you can't be upset with that, right? Because when you're because I'm an investor too, by the way, remember. So I can work both sides of it. So I am looking for a passionate, smart, about a customer person too, right? So I respect that. But there are times when it's really fun, because you're just like, what the heck? What do you have to lose? You can only be the best you. You can't be anybody else. But then when you really want something and you're asking, you really want them to come clean, right? And that's hard for them.
What's an example of that?
Well, like when you're wanting a commitment on a term sheet. This is not a customer issue, because the older you are, the more customers like that. Especially if you're selling to the kind of customers I am. So that's not a problem. It's just the investment thing. Because they're thinking, are you going to stay? Are you committed? But you already have your money. Why would you want to do? There are all those questions. That's not always comfortable for them to ask, because it's kind of not even legal for them to ask.
What's your point of view on the disproportion between male to female founders and execs?
I'm glad you asked this, because as we're wrapping this up, I want to make sure I talk about the female thing.
And we'll go to questions to the group in a little bit.
Because this is very important. When I was growing up in business, like in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s, I didn't optimize for being male or anything else, or female. I just didn't optimize for that. I was doing my job. I loved doing my job.
Meaning you didn't think about when you start your family or things like that?
No, I'm sorry. I just didn't. I didn't think, I have to have a baby. No, I have to. I've been married a bunch of times, so that's a whole other story.
How many times are you married?
A lot. I'm
A
not
lot.
telling. That's too many secrets.
It's got to be Googleable, right?
God, I hope not. This is why I don't date. No, this is why I don't date. No, the thing is, I optimize for bringing value to my audience. That's how I was raised. And I didn't think, I have to wear this or wear this lipstick or any of that. I just didn't think that way. I don't know why. I just wasn't born thinking that. Over time.
Was that a product of how you were raised, or do you actually think that was just something in you? Really? Do you think
it's interesting, because now I go to these groups all the time. I do all this speaking, and we've got leaning in and don't fall over and you're a woman. I'm like, what is that? What is that? I respect it. I just didn't experience that when I was growing up. And I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying people didn't pay attention. Maybe they did. I could not allow myself to see that. Maybe it was a survival thing, right? And I always was married to someone, right? When I was 19, I got married the first time. So that just was a part of me.
You got married at 19 the
yeah,
first time?
baby. And so I just got, so I was always married. It wasn't like that was weird, but I just didn't think about it. I was like, I have a job, I'm excited about it, I'm delivering value, that's it. But now I am aware, isn't it funny? Once you get a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so I will notice that I have let seep in my brain this whole notion of the female stuff and the age stuff and all this other stuff, which probably would have been just fine if I had not allowed that to seep in my brain, because I was fine without that. But I'm asked about it a lot, and I now notice. Isn't it funny? Now I notice, and I'll say this. This is a great little story. I was going through a situation, and someone said, well, I said, I want to do a certain thing by a certain stage. And they said, well, you don't look that old. I'm like, what the heck is that about? That has nothing to do with how I look. It has to do with who I am. Do you see what I'm saying? So now I notice it. And I think it's because I've been reading all these articles about it. And the stats are the stats. So the truth is, we're not represented well. And the truth is. But
what's your thought? What's your thought on why? Is there one why? Or are there lots of different reasons?
Well, here's the deal. I will say this for sure. A lot of stuff I don't know for sure. I know this for sure. I think women do interact and think differently overall. Right? I'm just telling you, I do.
What are some examples of that?
Well, because we're not black and white about everything. And our tolerance, our emotionality is different. It just is. I am sensitive to the interaction of the human being more than most men. Not all men, but most. And by the way, that helps. That's good and bad. Because sometimes I have to go home and take a salt bath to get that off, right? Because it's just, I wear it all over me, right? I'm very sensitive, very. And that's good and not good. So I think women have more tolerance. I think we definitely listen more differently. I hear feelings before I hear facts, and I try not to react to them. I try to kind of understand them, and that takes up a lot of time. Like I've had bosses just like, done. Like, no. But because I don't want to interact about that. The answer is no, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, well, that's rude. But not to him. He's like getting on with it. And that may be, I'm not about being efficient with people. People don't want to be, they don't want you to be efficient with them. They don't like that, especially now. So I think women do have some different characteristics. I think we now have a bigger responsibility to help others like have this understanding of creativity in a different way. And we have a responsibility to understand other things if we don't understand them. I just think the whole human condition is merging in a way where the left and the right brains, not left and right schools of political thought, that may be happening too, but I have no expertise on that, are coming together, and it's just going to be better for everybody. And I don't say that because I'm Southern and being sweet and naive. I think that's the truth. And I think we have to pay attention to that. And that is what's happening in the world, because we're closer, and we learn more, we know more, we have access to things more, and the truth is, transparency is valued. And transparency is you have to be really comfortable with being vulnerable to be transparent. And vulnerability is not naturally a male trait. It's just not. Some of you may be that, but mostly it's not a male trait. Mm-hmm. It comes to us naturally, I think, especially to me. So I'm really down with it, right? I feel so empowered now to talk about it in a very explicit way, to help others understand it. They don't have to be it or do it. They just need to understand it, because that's the workplace. Over 55%, that's us, wandering around, right? So it's very interesting. It's very exciting. It's a very good time.
Do you notice? Are you finding that men and women are more converging on their management styles, or that male and female CEOs are kind of finding their own path and developing different management styles?
I think it's a little age dependent. In my age group, it's really hard to get a guy my age to change. It just is. It's just hard. I mean, it's hard to change anyway, but I think the older you get, the harder it is to change. I think the younger and the 30 and 40-year-olds that I work with, I think they have just natural more flexibility because they're exposed to a lot more, right? I just feel that way. So I'm excited about that because I think that will change over time. And so I think our generation, this 55 to, I mean, that's just over, right? That whole thing is changing. It's not a good age. It's just not a good age. It's very kind of rigid. Everybody's in their box.
And so, last question I have for you for now, and then we'll go to the group. What's the thing that's driving you now? You've had a lot of professional success. You've had your own business. You've been in this company. You've got it. You've seen it through a lot forward. Whether it's with Get Satisfaction or over the next 5 years professionally, what's the thing that's driving you, and what are you really trying to accomplish now? I mean, I'm assuming it's not having a couple more $1 million in the bank account or anything like that.
No, I've never been money motivated. I'm not saying women aren't. I'm just saying I never have been. I never had money. I never thought about having a lot. Now I have a lot. It doesn't do one thing for me that's conscious. I just never think about it. The thing that drives me right now, morning to night, is achieving the potential of Get Satisfaction. And that's not a business statement. Remember, since 1984, I've been in the business of relationships between companies and their customers. So I have been involved in a body of work. So this is something to think about, your body of work. So I may have just fallen into my body of work at 29, but now I'm in that same body of work. It's just changed a lot over the years, right? It's CRM, if you call it that, has changed. It's not just technology, it's not just service. Now it's social, it has a web presence, it's a customer experience thing. But this body of work, I'm obsessed with that body of work, but I'm mainly obsessed with Get Satisfaction, achieving its potential. I see Get Satisfaction as having the same potential as Salesforce.com. Now that's how big my dream is about it. I don't see it as a widget or a feature or a little community piece. I see it as having the same potential as Salesforce.com. It can serve that many use cases. So I'm pretty obsessed with that. And I have to be careful about it because I breathe it, I wear it, I am it. And so that's both a blessing and a curse, but that's important for you to know. The second thing, I'm also extremely mindful of where I am in my life. And there's something about, I know for every person it's different, but when you see a 6 in front of your number, and you don't feel old. I don't feel old at all. I feel more youthful and more excited and vibrant than I ever have. But there's a responsibility there because just based on statistics, there's X amount of viable time and available time for you to get your job done, meaning you, as a human being, achieving your potential. So I've only begun to think of that in the last 6 months because I've been so all in to Get Satisfaction and I'm so excited about it. But now I'm thinking, okay, what about this woman called Wendy Lea? What about her potential and what does that mean? And I have some very distinct interests. I study comparative religion, always have, right? My mother taught me that, right? I'm completely obsessed with animals, love that. I have 9 nieces and nephews that I've supported through college that I want to see them be more entrepreneurial. So I have some distinct passions that I'm trying to fold in. And then there's this overarching thing for small business and entrepreneurship that I'm just on fire about. So the balance of that is becoming I'm more aware of it now. Mm-hmm. My number 1 focus is Get Satisfaction. My number 2 focus is myself, because if I'm not taking care of that, this other thing won't happen. And I am the CEO, leader, investor, board member of this thing called Get Satisfaction. And we've kind of just gotten started, right? I mean, we're just beginning a journey that's quite magnificent. So that's what's on my mind. I don't think about money. I don't think about holidays. I don't think about getting my nails done. I'm not a foodie. I'm not a big wine person. I just think about the bigger picture of the business, helping companies be with their customers and my role in that, and making sure I do what I'm supposed to do this time around on the planet. Does that help?
I think it's a great answer. That helps a lot. I want to thank you, Wendy, and I can tell you this very candidly. This the 39th one that we've done. And out of every single one, this is the one where I, by far, have learned the most myself.
Oh,
And you are absolutely incredible, gracious, wonderful. And for coming down and for spending time, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah,
and
my
really,
pleasure.
for everyone, thank you. And we're going to hang out. We'll have some alcohol. We'll have some food. The train stations come out. Get to hang out with Wendy. And everybody have a good time. And most off, thank you so much.
Thank you.